Welcome, everybody. My name is Carly Graham Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And welcome to the latest installment of Weekly Women Entrepreneurship. I am joined by Michele Siekerka, President and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, otherwise known as NJBIA to everyone who knows it. Michele, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to join you today.
So Michele, I would say you are very entrepreneurial. Even though you are not an entrepreneur necessarily yourself, you represent entrepreneurs and the business community of New Jersey. Tell folks who may be listening in today, what is NJBIA and what do you all do?
Absolutely. Well, NJBIA actually this year we're 110 years old, if you can believe it. And we were actually born during the Industrial Revolution by manufacturers here in the state of New Jersey. And then if you think about, where we are a century later, from representing manufacturing traditionally, now to representing every type of business and industry across the state, from the corner pizzeria and Main Street to the 1,000-employee call center to the biggest utilities in the state of New Jersey, to our educational facilities and to our nonprofits. We span over 12,000 businesses across the state of every size, geography, et cetera. And what we do is, primarily is we advocate on behalf of the business community, in that every day we are working tirelessly to ensure that New Jersey is a place that is affordable and regionally competitive for our businesses. Anyone who transacts businesses in New Jersey knows that's a huge challenge, right? So what we do on the back end of that is, as we're out there, fighting the good fight, we bring resources to our businesses to help keep down the cost of doing business and to keep them connected to everything that they need in order that they can be financially successful and be the great employers that we have here in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, that's great. So in this moment that we're in, we're all collectively in it as a sort of human beings across the world dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. How has NJBIA been supporting the business community here? It's probably a better question for me to say, how have you not been? Because I've been seeing tons of resources, but give our community a little bit of a flavor of how you've been helping everyone from sort of Main Street to the bigger companies that you represent in this moment.
Sure, absolutely. So, early on in COVID, when the shelter-in-place order went into effect, BIA immediately became a 24/7 call center for New Jersey businesses. There is no membership wall during a crisis like this. So we took everybody's calls. And when I say 24/7 call center, every one of us, our entire staff, was tirelessly on the phone trying to troubleshoot. What are the implications of executive orders, whether it's that first shelter in place, semi-essential, non-essential, all the way up to the very slow and methodical reopening of the state of New Jersey. We're there at every beat. The HR challenges are extraordinary. We have fielded thousands upon thousands of HR calls. We have hosted about 40,000 people on webinars over, right now as we're recording, we're in week 20 of COVID, right? So I know this may run later, but over 40,000 individuals on webinars, everything from how do I access grant and loan money at the state level and the federal level to, how do I address HR issues with my workforce vacationing in hot spots out of state and coming back and having to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And what does that mean, right? So there's that whole aspect of we're holding hands. The second, of course, is pushing out resources as well. A very dynamic website we created, njbia.org/recovery. Everything you need to survive COVID is on that website, whether it be, again, access to all the links to help you transact business during this time, or a framework document about how the state comprehensively should be reopening with best practices for business, and a toolkit for business. Check the boxes. On that toolkit, we have a certification program to help businesses check that they are a healthy work environment according to CDC and the World Health Organization and OSHA. And that certification program, we've had hundreds of businesses go through that certification program today. So that builds consumer confidence and certainly helps with liability in your workforce, showing you check all the boxes to make it a safe and responsible. And then the last piece is what we've done in policy, which is significant and huge. We've helped to facilitate a New Jersey business coalition of over 100 businesses and nonprofits who work together to push out comprehensive and effective policy during COVID, either proactively on here's what business needs to survive, which drives some of the grant programs that we see coming in, or reactively when there's bad policy, like policies on or workers' comp or increasing the cost of healthcare. We've been there at every turn with the coalition, pushing out, really great opportunities for better policy in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, that's great. So you touched on a lot there, but I also want to go back to the vision statement that your organization puts forth that I think is really strong. And you alluded to it a little bit, but I wanted to articulate it. New Jersey will reclaim its stature as the innovation state, the home of economic vitality, business prosperity, workforce skills excellence, and a great quality of life so that NJBIA members can grow and sustain. I love this because it intersects so much with the work that we're doing in our Montclair Innovation Lab right now, supporting student startups and also community startups. Tell me, if you would, because you're seeing and talking to business owners every single day, how are New Jersey businesses being entrepreneurial right now? How are they pivoting really for business continuity in this moment that we're all in?
Yeah, extraordinary. So when you're staring at a business model that you can't operate out of because of a pandemic, you go, what do I do? Because I got to put food on my table, right? So what we saw, for example, in small Main Street businesses, the shift in use of technology in order to deliver in real time, either curbside or, trying to be, a little mini Amazon, if you will. Very difficult for a business who was not engaged in that manner before. Good news is there's technical assistance coming from the state right now to help to enable that with our small businesses. I think restaurants have been extraordinary in terms of how they created really unique dynamic delivery options. So before we had nice weather and we could have outdoor dining, a lot of the restaurants were doing these like nice family menus or kits to make something. Even kits to have make fun drinks at home and things, right? So they were finding ways to take the experience and rebuild the experience in the home because people were sheltered in place and we needed to give people experience in the home to hang on and feel good, right? So those are just two quick examples of innovation. The other piece certainly is technology and remote work, how we are all learning and how companies are becoming innovative in their own right with their workforces in order to enable their own workforces to be more innovative on how do you effectively and efficiently do remote work and continue to be engaged with your clientele, your vendors, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a lot. And we're going to be continuing to see, I think, more pivoting by businesses to sort of respond to serving customers in this moment. Let's get to the question really that I invited you here for all of your knowledge that you have, and you're sharing so much of the great work that you're doing. But this focus is specifically on women and women entrepreneurs and sharing with our community and supporting one another. The NJBIA has done an amazing job of curating some really relevant content for all of us in this moment, how we can be supporting businesses, what's happening, the advocacy work that you mentioned. There was one study that you profiled that I thought was really interesting around coronavirus unemployment and how it's hit women the hardest. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit, especially women business owners, but also women professionals. There's been a fair amount of writing on this, especially as women disproportionately pick up domestic duties within their own homes, and many people are working from home. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen, especially as it relates to women business owners in the state of New Jersey?
So absolutely, the data does speak to the fact that women are affected from an economic perspective a bit harder than men. It's because of the type of roles in the workforce that women have, tend to be in government, in education, in some of the jobs that, have been affected by the ability to work literally, at a remote location. The other challenge is the women still traditionally are the primary care tender for children and family. And so for women who could work remotely because their job was more in the service industry, meaning the service is like professional service as opposed to retail service. The challenge is, when all the kids were home in the spring and now maybe home again in the fall, it does fall predominantly to the woman in the household who's now juggling her ability to do her full-time job, which is expected of her. But at the same time, she's now educator, not just mom, but educator too. Right? The pressures we've seen come to bear on women have been extraordinary. I talked to some of my colleagues who are in the mental health field. My daughter happens to be a therapist, and she tells me how many more women are living with guilt right now for their attempted ability to be able to balance, and the challenge also of when you're not an educator, right? Because that's not what you went to
Right.
school for. And now you're taking on this burden of being the one really to help educate your child in a remote environment. There's a lot of mother guilt that goes on. I mean, my God, we're terrible about mother guilt, right? We have it already. Compile, a pandemic on top of it, and see how hard that is. So this has had more of an adverse effect. We can see from the data, and also anecdotally, just talking with our members about the impact on women.
Yeah, for sure. I want to read some of the specifics just for our audience here. So the study that BIA profiled was from a Harris poll in support by Yahoo Finance. And it basically said nearly all men between the ages of 35 and 44, 96%, were still working the same job as before the pandemic, compared to only 60% of women of the same age. And so I guess that sort of leads me to ask you this, Michele. I mean, do you think it will take longer for women to recuperate from the pandemic's economic effects, especially in our state?
Yeah, so the entire recuperation for the economy is going to be longer than anyone expects. I mean, we see all types of data out there right now. Like when we thought we were talking about, recovery in, 6 months to a year. I mean, I can tell you the initial survey data for any business is for them to get back to COVID levels of revenue is 10 months or better, with the large majority of those surveyed saying a year to 2 years, and some saying we'll never get there. Right. So start from that baseline, and now add on top of that, again, the challenges we talk about with the role of women in theirs. And so, yes, this is going to be protracted out. And unfortunately, all the great gains we've been making from a D&I perspective, I think we're in a big pause. So a big pause means everything's going to be delayed. I do want to say, though, that there is significant focus on equity through the coming out, or going through, if you will, the continued process of COVID. There is a lot of attention of how do we, whether it's overburdened communities and how we go to overburdened communities and bring more resources, or whether it's segments of our population, and how do we focus. So, women-owned business, there are some grant programs out there that are specific for women-owned business, where you get extra points if you're women-owned business, and we know all the programs are oversubscribed. So if you're coming in with a WBE designation, you may have a leg up because you're going to get more credit in the grant program.
Yeah. So that leads me to dig in and ask a little bit more about the policy innovation that you and your team work on. You mentioned before some of the work that you've engaged around workers' comp and the cost of healthcare, but you're just talking about sort of equity and what policy can do to help sort of boost some of these programs. Is there anything that you're seeing in the legislature right now that is really innovative in terms of moving the needle, whether it be supporting women business owners or, really kind of bridging the gap in a more significant way around D&I? Anything that you're seeing in that space that you would encourage us to look at, or anybody else looking at, this conversation in another part of the world that they could adopt?
I mean, I would say right now, it's a lot of it is in the conversation mode while we're all learning and gathering data. I think it's, one thing that's important to us when we do policy at BIA is we do our homework on data first. I used the term earlier about what we hear anecdotally, and that's really important because we truly are boots on the ground. I talk to my businesses every single day, and I hear directly from them. But when I try to translate that to policymakers, I can't give them anecdotal. I need data behind it. And so, whether it's BIA directly or through the foundation that we're so closely aligned with, Focus New Jersey, which is the Center for Workforce and Economic Solutions, we do a significant amount of data to help support anything we advocate on. So right now, in the D&I world, Carly, businesses are all over the spectrum. We have some businesses who have really great D&I initiatives because they've been working on it for a while. We have a D&I initiative at BIA that we started about 2 years ago, and we learned in the work that we were doing with our businesses that we have some businesses that are very nascent in their understanding of what it takes. That's not bad, right? It's just where they are in the formation. And then we have some companies that are all the way over here. We need to take the best practices from over here and educate those who are a little more nascent in this space on what works and what doesn't work. So I will say that the one thing on equity and policy, and I'll use an example of women on boards, just for example, right? We advocate to the business community, because we have women's leadership program, that the business community needs to step up in this space and recognize that the more diverse your board is, the more ROI you as a company get. This is proven time and time with data. If you have a diverse C-suite and board, the ROI back to you as a company is significantly better than one that doesn't. I tee that up in that way because we really don't want mandates that say you shall have 3 women, 2 people of color, XYZ down the line. Like mandating that, while some can say mandate drives behavior, we think organically we can get there, and that organically is the more appropriate way to get there, because then it's really embraced from within and people understand the value.
And if the data, to your point, if the data demonstrates that those businesses go farther, sort of, and have revenues that prove that diversity then goes back to the bottom line, and that's the data story that you tell, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And the data is, I mean, there is such rich data out there. McKinsey has done studies. McKinsey has some great studies that we quote every year at our women's forum, and we update that every year, say, where are we moving the needle? And the needle is moving. The challenge is, we were making slow and steady progress, and now we're gonna be on a pause, at some of these issues. That does not detract from the fact that we have to keep moving that.
Yeah. Okay. Really helpful stuff. Last question from me. Tell me more about what we can be doing, really kind of as customers of your membership right now in this moment. What can we be doing as customers to help businesses in our community and then sort of writ large? I mean, you are very focused on Main Street issues. What is some of your advice around supporting businesses and really kind of demonstrating our need for them ongoing after this moment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it is the businesses and it's those who employ a workforce that create our economy. And so when we talk about business, we talk about job creators, right? Now, job creation, there's a few steps to job creation. I can have businesses that have jobs available, but if we don't have a skilled workforce to fill those jobs, we haven't done our job. And so the natural connection between what we do in business and what you do in education is workforce development. And this is why we so savor our relationship with our higher eds and our post-secondary institutions, because we need to educate the future of the workforce. And we know now, particularly when you put a COVID layer over on and all the changes, that the economy of tomorrow is going to be different, the types of jobs of tomorrow are going to be different. We were already going there pre-COVID relative to technology and how technology will be more in balance and how it'll affect certain jobs. But right now we need to accelerate our workforce skill development so that we can fill the jobs that are in-demand jobs in real time. We've got a skill gap in this state and this nation that is incredible. Tens of thousands of vacant jobs available today because there's a gap in skill set of what would be traditional, whether it's trades or even soft skills such as the ability to be agile and move across a horizon of jobs, as opposed to coming out of school with just a vertical skill set that says, I'm going to become a lawyer, right? I'm an attorney. The agility is I could take my legal skills and pivot that into being the CEO of an organization, right? We need that type of ability to pivot and the skills that go along with that as well.
That's great. Really helpful. Michele, thank you so much for being with us. Michele Siekerka, President, CEO of NJBIA. Thank you for making time to share your wisdom with this group.
Keep up your great work, Carly. We need you. Thank you.